Hello, my name's Captain Space Toaster. If you're watching this video, sounds like your stream's having a bit of a struggle. What we're going to try and do here today is talk a little bit about what your computer's doing when you stream, and why you might be having some problems with a laggy stream or some dropped frames, and what you can do to fix it if possible. We're going to do what we can to cover some common tools, and let's just jump right into it. So basically, we have an assumption that you're running OBS, maybe some Windows system, Windows 7, 8, 10. But if you happen to be using Streamlabs OBS or a different operating system, you can take what I'm saying and hopefully transfer it to whatever it is your system looks like. All of the kind of concepts should be able to transfer. In Windows, there is a very useful tool, however, called Resmon. You can get to it by searching in your start bar, RESMON, and it opens up this beautiful little window called the Resource Monitor, and you can, of course, monitor resources. Neat. So in the CPU tab, we'll be able to see how much of your CPU is currently available to do work. Because when you are streaming in OBS, your CPU is, usually at least, in charge of doing all of the work to take all your video sources and turn them into a video stream. So currently I've set up OBS in that sort of fashion. We click this magical start streaming button, and wouldn't you know it, we are streaming. Wait a minute, we're going live. Oh, don't do that. We just accidentally went live. Let's go ahead and bandwidth test equals true. Alrighty, apply. There we go. Now we aren't going to go live anymore. Yes, that was actually real. Sorry for all of you on, September 4th. I'm sorry. Sorry. Alright, so we are now streaming, and you'll notice that our CPU bumped up just a little bit. So what that means is that we now have, of course, a bit less of our CPU available to play video games or do whatever it is our computer usually does, but as long as we're well under this 100% mark, we're fine. But let's mess around with this a little bit. In fact, we're just streaming a black screen right now, which is really boring. In fact, our viewers probably don't like the fact that I notified them about a stream pretty late in the evening that was just a black screen. That was definitely a letdown. So let's go ahead and make a scene that'll look a little bit more, well, crazy. We're going to call this the stress test scene, because we're going to use this and drop in a video. We could, of course, drop in some gameplay if you happen to have a game available and you want to do that. But I've got a video prepared. It's on my desktop, but you can download it in the description of this video. Let's drop in a media source. That's fine. Let's name it just something fun. Let's go ahead, browse to our desktop. We've got a video right there. Let's make sure it loops, and I don't want to hide the source when the playback ends. Okay. Bam! So this is a video of me swinging my camera wildly in Overwatch, and two things. One, this is dumb gameplay. Don't do this when you're playing Overwatch. Two, when you take a look at your CPU, you'll suddenly notice a massive spike in its usage. What's going on? Well, while your computer is trying to encode the massive amount of changing pixels and all this movement, it suddenly has to work a whole lot harder to prepare that stream. And this changes based on how many pixels are changing at a time. So if we size this down, we should see this drop down just a bit, which is weird. So the idea is that if you're streaming a thing that has a lot of movement or change all the time, then your CPU has to do more work. So this is going to be the cause for a lot of trouble if you happen to have a CPU that's not as powerful. If you happen to open up Resmon and you see that you're at the 80 to 90 to 100% range while you're playing a game or while something else is going on, you're going to have some trouble getting your stream out to the world because your video encoder won't have much time to do what it needs to do. You're going to see a lot of dropped frames. In fact, one of the most common symptoms is that your stream's going to be good for like 2 seconds, it's going to lag out, then it's going to be good for 2 seconds, then it's going to lag out, then it's going to be good for 2 seconds because of how Windows is sort of dividing up who gets the CPU when. So that's not a great solution. How can we fix that? Well, there are a couple things you can do. In fact, there are, I'm going to say, 9 to 8-ish things you can do to fix this problem, specifically in terms of your CPU. So let's walk through those now. Alright, solution number 1 is pretty simple. If you've changed anything recently, try and change it back. I don't know what that could be, but hopefully you do. Did you install a program recently? Go ahead and just uninstall it. Did you make any major changes or settings? Just switch it back. Did you plug in something recently? Unplug it. You know, just do what you can. Of course, be safe. And if suddenly you see that you get your CPU budget back, then go for it. That must have been your problem. Of course, whenever you change something and you're not sure what, go ahead and give your computer a restart. Never hurts. And sometimes that can cause your computer to close a program that you didn't even know was open. Solution number 2. Why don't we head over to Resmon here and pay a little more attention to this list of running processes. Here we're going to see 2 large CPU driven tasks. My 2 OBS processes. One is this stream that's currently running, and the other is this, well, recording that's going on. And what's going on here is these are the largest tasks that I have currently running, but you might have some others. So give the names a read. If you happen to not recognize the name, you can Google it. A lot of these things are going to be Windows processes you can't really deal with, but hey, that's a chat program. Maybe we don't need that running, for example. Of course, take a look at how much CPU it's actually using. If it's large, then I would consider it, but if it's very small like all these, then just ignore it and move on. If you can't find anything big, well then let's move on to another solution. Solution number 3 is honestly very simple as well. If you happen to be running a computer game or computer program while streaming, see what settings or options you have in that video game to try and turn them down. When doing this, it definitely helps to make changes slowly and deliberately, so change one thing at a time, and go ahead and measure your CPU usage every single time you make a change. You might have to restart your program for this, and it will be tedious, but you want to change one thing at a time and measure if your CPU usage goes up or down, and then decide whether or not that's a good change. So I know in Overwatch I can adjust the render scales and whatnot, but sometimes it makes the game look too poor, and I don't like even looking at my monitor anymore. But the idea is that you can make some changes, and you might be able to give your CPU just a little bit more time or a little bit more oomph to be able to encode your stream and get it out the door instead of dropping frames every 2 seconds, and that'd be a good change. Solution number 4. This is one that, quite honestly, not a whole lot of people will talk about. Let's head over to our settings in OBS and take a close look at some of our output settings. Now, on the simple view, you won't be able to see these options by default unless you enable the advanced encoder settings, in which case you'll see this encoder preset. If you change this preset to a higher value than what it currently is, such as ultra fast, what you're going to do is turn down the quality on your stream, make it look maybe a little more blocky, especially with all those wild movements. But instead of a laggy stream, you'll find that a ultra fast preset starts to give you back some of your CPU time. So the idea is you're trading quality for a simpler stream. It's easier to encode because you're simply just encoding less. This isn't a great solution, so the idea is you want to be able to push that setting as low as you can while still streaming smoothly. That way you can deliver as much quality as you can afford. Solution number 5. This is a really kind of silly one, but if you happen to have an NVIDIA graphics card or an AMD graphics card, there are some things you can do here. Head to your settings, and instead of making your CPU do all the work, head to this encoder dropdown and change it over to your graphics card. Instead of software x264, change it to the other option. If you happen to have an NVIDIA card, it'll read NVENC. And if you happen to have a Radeon card, you either may see something there, or you might need to install a plugin. If you need to do some more research on that plugin, there's a link in the description for you, and it will, by default, or well, now from here on out with that setting enabled, push the job of encoding your video process over to your graphics card. So you will see your CPU just change a little bit. It does take a little bit of processing power to do this, but for the most part, the entire process of your stream is now on the graphics card, and so your CPU won't struggle at all. However, your graphics card might. If you happen to be monitoring your GPU temperature, it's definitely bumping up, its fans are spinning faster, it's doing more work, and if you happen to be playing a graphics-intensive game like Overwatch or another FPS, you're definitely going to notice a hit in performance. But if you happen to be playing a low-intensity game like Hearthstone or Jackbox games or what have you, or you happen to be using a bunch of webcams and you're just doing a creative stream, hey, this is a great solution for you, right? Use your GPU, make it do the encoding, and that way you don't drop any frames and it's still pretty smooth. A lot of people do report that the NVIDIA encoders and Radeon encoders do not look as good for the same bitrate. So if you really want everything to look as clear as you can, you definitely want to continue to try and use the X.264 encoder. But if you just cannot get anything to work really, then this is definitely something I wanted to provide as a solution. It can work. It can definitely work for you. And if it does, then do it. So solution number 6. If you can't seem to get any value out of any of the other solutions, we can start to do more aggressive things. Now, we're definitely starting to run out of options, but we're not out of the water yet. So take your overall size of whatever it is you're streaming and just size it down a bit, right? We saw this earlier. The smaller the viewport of whatever is moving on your screen, the easier it is for your computer to render or encode. So you'll notice by me just slowly making this window smaller and smaller and smaller, we are getting our CPU back. Of course, when the video is all black and it's all small, that's easy, but when it's moving wildly, you'll see that our CPU is still doing work. So you probably don't want to stream Overwatch at this resolution or that small, but the idea is that the smaller it is, the easier it is for your computer to manage. Now, instead of filling up this dead area with like a webcam or chat, which is probably fine, low activity kind of content, you can also research into stopping your stream, making this full size, but then changing the full size resolution of what it is you're streaming. So in your settings, head to your video tab on simple, which I am still on simple. You can change your output resolution to be a downscaled version of what your default resolution could be. So normally we would be streaming a 1080p stream, but that option I just changed will make it a 720p stream. By starting the stream, you'll notice it never gets back up to the 60-70% it was. It should hover a little lower. So that's definitely another solution. Of course, viewers who want to view your stream now can only view it at 720p, but it might be smoother, and that's a better solution than a slideshow, at least in my book. So this is definitely an option. Just for completionist's sake, if you happen to be using the advanced options, in the output setting, right, you change this output mode to advanced, you have the ability to rescale the output for your stream and for your recording separately. So you can change that option on this page if you happen to be using the advanced dropdown. If you're on simple, you have to do it over on this video tab. All right, so we're kind of out of good options at this point. We've turned everything down that we can. We've closed unnecessary programs. We've turned down our stream settings. And if none of that is working for you, then I don't have too many good options left. One thing I did find is to open up your system settings and look at how many cores you happen to have in your processor. Right, we're getting into some really deep level stuff, and you're going to have to find a way to set what is called CPU Affinity. There's a link in the description of this post to a Reddit post about some users doing this and having some success. I read it and thought, oh, that's a good idea. I'll share that information. What you're trying to do here is set up a little play area so that 2 cores or some number of cores of your choice go to your video encoder, and then maybe 2 cores go to your video game, and so that there are always at least 2 cores able to help out video encoding, and then 2 cores able to play your game. And that way, if a game is mismanaging the amount of work it's trying to ask your computer to do, Windows won't accidentally steal time away from your video encoder and give it to the video game. So this is sort of a way to like kind of put a very hard limit and always reserve a little bit of time for a CPU. It may work, it may solve your problem, but I honestly wouldn't expect the solution to really solve a problem. It's just something I found, and it's like, oh, well, that's good to know. If you happen to be running a poorly optimized game, this could be a solution. Well, past that point, the only other things we have left are build a new computer, which is fairly obvious, right? Save $700 to $900 and get yourself a really good mid-range computer to solve this streaming problem with an actual, computer that can do the job you need it to do. The other option is to overclock, I guess. I mean, overclocking isn't really an option, especially on some Intel processors where it's still locked. And you need to have really good cooling solutions inside of your computer. Your computer needs to be in a well-ventilated area, and you need to make sure your computer's clean and doesn't have a lot of dog hair, cat hair, or dust inside as well. So it's not something I would recommend. And even then, you probably won't be able to increase the frequency and voltage a whole lot before you reach a thermal level that you just can't go any further. So if you overclock just a little bit, you probably aren't going to get much value out of it. So overclocking might be able to help you get like a little bit of a larger preset, or it might be able to stop the occasional stutter, but overclocking isn't a good solution if you're like dropping frames every other second. It just isn't able to help you out that much. So that's it. Those are all the solutions that I have for you guys. I mean, the stuff in the middle there is really the most important part, right? Finding ways to measure how much your CPU is being used and finding ways to turn it down just so that you can figure out what are acceptable levels. That's what we need to kind of really focus in on. So hopefully that was useful to you guys. If we covered something that was maybe a problem of yours and we found a way to fix it, that'd be great to know. I'd love hearing how I was able to help you guys. A comment in the video would be great. If you're still having some struggle though, maybe some questions, or you need me to clarify something, go ahead and ask a question in the comments. I'd love to answer it if I can. You can always reach me on Discord. But basically that's all I have for you guys. So if I was able to help you, I'm really happy, and I hope you guys have a great and wonderful rest of the day tomorrow. Toodaloo. Just kidding, forgot the title card.